Unfortunately, not everyone's background was full of positive, godly views of sexuality. So what do you do if you're married and you have negative views on sex? Let's talk about it. We are excited to let you know that we are starting an online course. This will be our first beta group that we are being able to offer this to. It is Sacred Sensuality, and this is going to be a course that really helps you to become fully satisfied and more connected with your spouse, physically, emotionally, and also spiritually. So if you are interested, please go to the link below, have a discovery call with us to see if this is a good fit for you. For those of you who are struggling with seeing sex, specifically married sex, in a negative view, I just want to let you know you are not alone, especially for Christians. There's so many of us that have been brought up in, honestly, some of the purity culture, which had extreme good intentions, didn't exactly cover a lot about that once you're married, it's beautiful and holy.
Right.
So for a lot of my clients, especially, I've seen so many women that it's completely confused because they're told, no, dirty, wrong, completely their entire childhood life, then put on a white gown, take it off, and now it's supposed to be good. It's extremely confusing for a lot of women that, what now? How do I go from dirty, no, never. I mean, just complete negative viewpoint of sex to now it's okay. And then that's all that's said.
That's right.
That you are now allowed to have sex. And so with sex being such a taboo topic, why would we think it to be a positive thing?
Right.
Like, especially as Christians, if something is not talked about, it's usually because it's negative, dirty, sinful. I mean, just something that we're not supposed to talk about.
Perhaps you did talk about it, but it wasn't exactly in the most wholesome environments, and the conversations didn't really honor God. And so you're left with thinking and associating sex with that negative mindset. Or
if you were activated too early and saw sex in a really, honestly, inappropriate manner, your little bitty brain wasn't ready yet.
Right.
You weren't ready to see. And so some of that, and then if there was any trauma.
That's right.
If you've experienced trauma, it is very challenging to flip a switch from something that wasn't supposed to happen.
That's right.
And was not your fault.
That's right.
And you carry this guilt and shame that doesn't belong to you. But like when you've been through that kind of trauma, you have to release. I mean, there's so much. You can't just simply release. Like there really is a lot of therapy, a lot of work. I don't mean to cut it short. It's just that it's a different mindset when you're moving over to it's now godly and holy and safe within the confines of marriage.
That's right.
And that takes work.
And your spouse has to be along for the ride on that as well. And very supportive.
In a sensitive way, absolutely.
Another thing that can impact you negatively with a mindset towards sex is pornography. Pornography is something that is on display all the time. And yet, God's design for intimacy between a husband and a wife is a very special, very sacred, very closed door type of thing. And
which is why for some people, it's hard for you to have a positive mindset on sex because, unless you're in that specific marriage, in that holy union, you're not necessarily allowed behind those doors. You're not supposed to be.
That's right.
And that's why we have the Bible and we have, positive education on sex in a positive light. But when you've been exposed to addictions and porn and all of this negative stuff, it gets confusing. I have a lot of like male clients where, I almost have to kind of remind them, that lady is a paid actress.
Right.
She is faking it.
Right.
Your godly, holy wife is not going to act the same as the Hollywood star. Sorry, guys. Also, sometimes there is just misplaced messaging, especially growing up. Perhaps your mother told you, don't have sex, this is so wrong, but yet, she didn't address that sex was wrong, or perhaps she wasn't married and had numerous boyfriends. And, so sometimes there's this misplaced what someone is telling you about sex and what you actually witness. And so sometimes without kind of having some more of that, spending time with God and learning the positive ways of sex, it's really easy to fall into those negative views and seeing sex as dirty and sinful and gross. And, it can be easily confusing. I also had a lot of women, some of my clients that, really struggled with such intense aversion to sex from their teaching and their upbringing that when it actually came time for their wedding and just for their marriage in general, they actually struggle with vaginismus, which is where basically your brain kind of tells your body to shut everything and the man actually can't consummate the marriage.
Right.
And again, that is something that if that's you, that is something that is absolutely helpable.
Yeah.
That's something that absolutely can be helped with doctors, pelvic floor therapists, pelvic floor specialists, and therapists.
Yes.
So this is something that, I've helped some people come over, and, if you're not able to consummate, you can't have children, which is oftentimes when people come in for that problem. But, honestly, if that is you, go get help sooner, get help right away. Sex is not meant to be painful.
No.
And if it is painful, that's also another thing that can cause sex to be seen in a negative light.
Right.
It's hard to say, well, this is pleasurable when it's actually painful.
Right.
So if it's painful, that's another area that also could be taken to, a place that you might need to get some help for.
Because sex has been taken so out of context concerning the biblical design, there's really, honestly, no limit to the number of ways that you could develop a negative mindset towards sex. But I think it's really important that then you take some time to take a step back and ask yourself, how do you view sex? What are the factors that are contributing towards your view of sex?
Kind of like, what was your upbringing?
Yeah.
What do you bring to the table? What are you currently experiencing? Perhaps you had a more positive, view of sex, but then in marriage it hasn't turned out the way you thought it would.
Right.
And perhaps now you're starting to have more of a negative mindset. And so thinking through, how do I actually see it? What are some things that contributed to that?
Right.
To truly be able to process and being able to see what kind of problems is it causing you?
Right.
Is this hurting your marriage? Is it causing you to not really receive any pleasure that God actually designed for you to have?
Right.
God actually designed both mutually, husband and wife, to enjoy pleasure and intimacy. And that's another thing to think about too, is how do you want to see sex?
That's good. Yeah.
To really think through, like, what would it look like if you saw it through God's eyes? If
Fireworks.
you saw it through being positive.
Fireworks. God's eyes, He wants it to be pleasurable. He wants it to be enjoyable and be mutually satisfactory, and fireworks. But that's the truth, is that God desires that for you. But often we don't think that that's attainable, or we don't think that we're deserving of that, and we kind of give up on it.
That's true. Also, I want to say that it's really important that you make sure to give yourself some grace.
Yes.
Because it took a really long time, probably for some of you, most of your entire life or most of your childhood. Like, it took some time for you to develop this negative mindset that you have towards this negative view that you have towards sex. And so it's not going to take as long, praise the Lord, as it took you to get a negative mind, to get a positive one. But it will take some time.
Yeah.
So it's important to give yourself some grace in the process and know that you can get to a place that you see sex the way God designed it, as beautiful and holy and sacred. That you can actually see it that way. But again, it does take some time, and so give yourself some grace. So how to start that process? So basically, you want to restructure your thoughts. You want to change your thoughts and move them from all the negative things that you've been thinking and feeling and seeing towards God's truth. So you actually want to challenge the thoughts that you have with God's truth, with God's scriptures, His word.
That's good. And it's really important to understand, if you're going to really put up a fight against that negative mindset, it's really important that you know the truth. And the truth is that God created sex to be beautiful, between the husband and the wife, mutually satisfactory. There's an entire book in the Bible that celebrates sex. And it's really important that you spend some time looking at those scriptures.
And just so to really challenge those thoughts, you have to use God's word. You have to use those scriptures, which again, like you're saying, you have to know them to be able to move forward. So a good way that I really like to restructure your thinking is positive affirmations or positive self-talk. So again, it's awesome to be able to use scriptures, read scriptures, and you can use them as positive affirmations or create your own positive affirmations as well. So if there's something you've been through in your past, you can kind of basically
reframe it.
Not the opposite, but reframe it exactly.
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to say, you can say them, write them, repeat them, review them.
Sing them.
Just you can sing them. So, but basically you want things such as sex is good and of God.
Yeah.
You know, sex is holy.
Yes.
You know, sex with my husband is intimate.
Yes.
Being able to say these things where you're able to hear it differently, you know, see it differently, things that you've been saying to yourself, it's dirty, it's unholy, it's all these things. You know, now you want to fill your brain with what God says about it. Sex is mutual. Sex is a choice.
Time. And it can especially take time if there are extenuating circumstances and triggers and maybe emotional or spiritual abuse, physical abuse, things like that in your past. And if that is you and you're listening to this right now and you're like, I just don't know where to start, well, maybe the best place to start would be seeking professional help. Find a counselor, find a pastor to talk to. Start with talking to someone. That would be our advice to you.
Yeah, that's safe. Absolutely. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. I hope this was helpful for you. Don't forget about our online course. If you're interested, make sure that you sign up, get a discovery call with us, and we can kind of talk you through and see if this might be a good fit for you to help basically improve your intimacy with your spouse.
If you like this video, give us a thumbs up and make sure you hit subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you'll be notified when we drop a new video. Also, if you know someone else who you think would really benefit from this video, share it with your friends.
See you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.